Wow. I mean, all the years that we lived over there, we never had a flooding. And the flooding in that house happened when the river flooded.
Yes, Chair Green, it is 6 o'clock and I have started the recording.
Yeah, we have enough. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. The Code Enforcement Advisory Committee. Is there a motion to approve our minutes? So move.
Second.
Thank you, Member Chisholm and Member Benson. Vote all in favor. Did anyone have a correction or discussion on it? Okay, all in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that was unanimous. Unanimous, minutes approved. Okay, we'll move on to the public forum. There's an opportunity for the public to address our committee. There's an expectation that presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Committee members may ask questions for clarification, but there won't be a back and forth. Please limit your presentation to 3 minutes. Is anyone present who wishes to speak? Please come forward. Yeah, and then right over here. Got time on that?
I wasn't going to come, even though I was a little upset about some things that had happened at the last meeting. But I got an email from the city attorney, which concerned me. As a former member of this committee, I can attest to the process that was confirmed and followed. 7-day informal notice, 14-day posting notice with the option of administrative appeal before a summons and complaint can be issued. That's the 21 days that was referred to in the last meeting. It's still in effect, and it's in the code, Title 15, and it's on the Code Division website under facts, and it's been that way since 2018. 7-day informal, 14-day posting notice, option for administrative appeal. There is no process indicated that allows for the formal 17-day notice to be used or excused as educational. It is always a warning. It says so right in the code. This is a new process that is not substantiated by code. As a recipient of a formal 14-day posting notice, I am concerned about the violations of my rights to appeal administratively. But I'm most concerned about the code section in Title 15 that says receipt of 3 such notices of violation is prima facie evidence of willful violation of code. Doesn't matter what code section is violated, 3 of them. And it subjects any individual that's received 3 over any period of time to the general penalty of $2,650, which is in addition to any other fees and fines. This committee has the responsibility to assess, review, and make recommendations on priorities and processes of code enforcement. I don't see that code enforcement gets to change the process and deny citizens their rights in code. As a previous speaker said, this type of notice can follow us for years. The response I got from code enforcement said I had no right to the administrative appeal. That my testimony, which I never made, closed my case, but that I had no case. But my address will still be recorded, it appears, and counts as one of the posting notices that might subject me to the prima facie clause. I don't know if I have time to read the response I got, but I found it very confusing. Part of it says, you may always call me directly to have these conversations. Your case has been closed based on your testimony at CEAC. No administrative hearing is available to you on this case or any case where the notice is used for educational purposes or as a warning. And as I previously said, there's nothing in code or even in the code division's facts and processes that talks about educational use of a 14-day notice.
That
And
is
it's
time.
always been a warning. Am I finished?
That instance.
You didn't give me any warning. Anyway,
Thank you.
Can I request to have the full letter read as you making the response? Can I make that request to hear the full response?
I guess we can extend it. I don't know why we couldn't. So yeah, go ahead and read the whole.
Okay.
Why don't you read? So I would think we'd want context then if we're going to have the whole response. What is the response?
Response to the first letter you read, correct?
well, no, I sent an email to the city attorney and asked her some questions about process and the only response I got was a notice that my question had been sent to code enforcement, the code enforcement manager, Dave Lewis. And this is the response. And then then yesterday I got a follow-up from the city attorney who said, did you ever get the appeal form? Because I'd asked for it from the city clerk. And she said, yes, she could give it to me, but then I never got it. So I asked the city attorney about that and a few other matters. And she followed up yesterday and said, did you ever get the appeal notice?
Well, since we are extending it for a specific thing, go ahead and read. the
Okay, well, I was
response.
putting it in context for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Ms. Dickerson, thank you for taking the time to speak at CEAC last night. You may always call me directly to have these conversations. Your case has been closed based on your testimony at CEAC. No administrative hearing is available to you on this case or in any case where the notice is used for educational purposes or a warning, even though the code says it right in.
Just read what it says
Okay.
right now.
As explained at CEAC, the seasonal notices that are being posted are closed as warnings. No administrative hearing will be available. These notices are treated as educational opportunities to voluntarily correct any perceived violations. An owner occupant who may have a question, conflict, concern, or affirmative defense may call the inspecting officer. This is why contact information is on every posting. It is best to work directly with a code official to resolve concerns or to seek clarification. The primary role of code enforcement is to seek voluntary compliance, and that is what is archived with the seasonal notice. For future reference, the administrative hearing is requested with the court clerk as stated in EMC. You may go to the court to request this. For the record, I did not say that seasonal code officials were untrained. Seasonal code officers are unsworn, which limits their enforcement power to be similar to that of a building official or community development member. Seasonal code officials can conduct inspections similar to other city officials, whereas a sworn code official can issue a summons and conduct investigations utilizing law enforcement tools and resources.
Did anyone have any questions for Ms. Dickerson? You didn't really state your name. I know your name. Okay. Thank you very much.
I also have copies of the code if you'd like to review them, which I think we all should know the code.
Thank you. Anyone else present? I don't see anybody else who wishes to address us. All right, we'll close the public forum and move on
I
to
would
code
like to add a
enforcement.
point of
significant
order.
events.
I did receive a public comment email from Member Hughes
We
prior to
actually
the deadline at noon.
received something submitted as public comment.
So I did receive an email and it was approved as public comment.
You're out of order.
So
You're out of order completely. You're not a member of this committee.
I'm putting
You
it
don't
on
get to make
record
a
that
point
there
of
was
order.
another citizen
Violating Bob's
email.
Rules of order. I'm putting this all on the record. You don't get to do what you're doing, so stop. Thank you. Code enforcement significant events.
Before we move on, I just have a point of information.
You don't get to make points either. You get to speak when you're spoken to and answer our questions and address the things that that are on the agenda for you to address.
Thanks, Carson. I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll review the code enforcement first quarter report ourselves and ask you questions. Does anyone have any questions for Code Manager Lewis? Well, been given late because it's not in the agenda.
Green, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Because I'm new to the group, I'm trying to best learn processes. And so I know that in the past, not knowing, because I was going to miss a meeting and I saw it, one of our agenda items we were going to vote on time ago. I had replied.
Sounds like something for committee members' choice.
Okay.
Rather than discussing these statistics.
Fair.
Okay,
Fair.
all right. We will have that then. I want to stick to the agenda, and the agenda is something that in our bylaws is defined as the chair defines. You all vote for the chair defines the agenda. There's been a dispute about the agenda this week because there was some things going on that I'll explain later on, but we're going to stick to the agenda and we're going to carry out our rules as they're intended. And they're defined in the bylaws. And if anyone has any concern about me following the bylaws and following the way that this is supposed to be processed, we're a committee of citizens who have been appointed to make these recommendations, and we have access to the code manager to be able to ask questions and be informed about things we have. It's not his job to run this meeting. It's not his job to define what happens in this meeting. It's not his job to define anything about what this citizen committee who's been appointed does. And we create our bylaws and we go by our bylaws, and we're going to stick with the bylaws. So that's what we're doing right now. I have a question about what is the reason the snow removal was so massively higher? Was that a seasonal hire and more additional enforcement proactively?
I'm sorry, I'm not able to answer any questions for tonight. I'm not feeling very well. Thank you.
Excuse me?
I'm not feeling very well. Thank you.
Okay, like sick, maybe you should leave.
I'm okay right now. Thank you.
Not feeling well, like we should be concerned about catching something from you?
No.
Manager Lewis, would you answer a question for me?
I'm not prepared to answer any questions tonight. I'm sorry.
We're not gonna be able to get much done.
Yeah.
If you're not gonna answer any questions, how are we gonna discuss the change to municipal code that you're pushing?
I need to excuse myself. Thanks.
All right. Then our code enforcement quarterly report, not much we can do on that, with that. So we'll move on to our unfinished business. And we'll have to discuss this without input from Code Manager Lewis, because he just left. We're going to review the proposed changes to Title VI, Chapter 5, Section 652 of the Englewood Municipal Code Establishing Property Reinspection. So hopefully everyone's read these changes and is prepared to discuss them. I don't think we're going to be able to make any decisions on this without input from Code Manager Lewis. After going through it more, I think what would be most appropriate is for us to ask the city attorney to come to our meeting and help us understand it. Because I'm hearing people who show up, as well as a bunch of people who've contacted me from the community. People are concerned about this. And we've recommended some modifications to it, and it came back with some of the modifications that make sense, but others are not clear. It's still not clear that this is not going to accumulate for someone over time and cause, once you've hit 3 over a total period of time across violations, then you suddenly start getting reinspection fees. You know, that's not the way it's been in the city. And I would be asking Code Manager Lewis to interpret this right now. But what I would recommend is that we request the city attorney to come to our meeting and help us understand this. And I think that, you know, and I want to hear any thoughts from everyone. But I think that even on the second part, so the main language that is the big change is the A and B that are underlined in our packet. And we've got now discretion on the first part. The city may impose reinspection fee, although I'm concerned about the wording because they dropped the calendar year part in the new proposed change, whereas the previous one, it actually specified like within a calendar year. But it didn't specify across types of violation, you know, separating between types of violations, the discussion that we asked. And the language that came back does not make me comfortable that it satisfies what Code Manager Lewis explained to us it would do in the meeting where he was willing to talk to us. And the second part is taking away the judge's discretion. So it's putting a shall on reinspection fees from if it's a judge choice, or if it's in the courts, it's taking away the judge's choice. And I don't like that. I think that needs to be may as well. I think we need to allow the judge to have discretion as well, because from what I'm understanding, most of the time something even gets to this, there is an ability to pay, whether it's an elderly person who couldn't mow their lawn quick enough because it was raining or whatever, and they're already dealing with money issues, and the judge takes that into account in his decisions. If it's not someone who's repeatedly negligent, the judge should have the discretion to be able to choose not to fine them, and that's not in here right now. I think we need shall on both. I know we've talked about, go ahead.
Clarification, did you mean may on both instead of shall?
You're right. Thank you. I meant may on both. Thank you, Member Emmelhainz. Any other thoughts, questions? Go ahead.
I just want to back up a step, and this might address some of the questions. And this is, say, that the role of this committee, confusion of who's on first. If the city says to us, this is the wording we want, and we say to the city, we don't agree with these 4 things in your wording, and they come back.
When you say the city, you mean?
Well, the authorities, the city attorney, the people that the infrastructure of Englewood, the leadership, the staff, they're saying, we want to be able to put some teeth into enforcing some of these codes. Wording is promulgated, sent for our review.
It's not always like that.
No,
That's
that's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, I mean, most of the things since I've been on this committee have been things that we brought up.
Okay.
Like citizens come to us and talk about an issue, and then we identify in the code a potential improvement, and then we make a recommendation to city council. It's not usually the city attorney or the
Okay.
code manager telling us that this needs to change. This is actually the first time I've really dealt
Okay.
with this, other than there was some around the dog, but that was also partially initiated by our committee because we had put a lot of effort into dangerous dog code and structure around that. And then we brought up the change to the code manager Lewis brought up, and this was another one that was kind of back and forth where he had brought up that there were situations where code enforcement officers couldn't do anything because the code specifically said dog and cat. And they
Okay.
were dealing with like a lizard, right? So that kind of thing we thought made great sense. So
Sure.
we did a separate recommendation to city council.
Right.
We recommend we make that, however we made it generic enough to cover the legal pets that people have.
Okay.
Right? So it's not always pushed on us and said, here's some code
Okay, so
changes that we
Thank you.
want and we want.
let me get to my question, because
Okay.
that helps, thank you. So if we say the community is concerned about something, we bring it up here and we say to the city, we think this code should be changed or clarified or modified or what have you. And the city says, thank you for your input. They're not obligated to take our recommendation, correct?
Well, they can't do anything themselves. It's city council.
This is what I don't understand.
Can I make,
Yeah,
can I
Yeah,
make a
please.
suggestion?
City council member.
So the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee is an advisory committee to city council.
Yeah.
And so you don't make the recommendations to city staff. And that's part of the reason there's public forum. You need to hear from the citizens what they want because we have representative government.
okay.
And so this goes to city council and the city council should, listen and take into consideration your suggestions. But you're looking at suggestions from citizens and then weighing everything out.
Okay, so if I could so whatever it is, we communicate to city council and say, the consensus is the following. We think this should happen or change or modify. City council says, thank you for your input. City council then decides what they do with it.
Exactly. They can
So
do
city
whatever.
council could put it on a shelf, or city council could send it to code manager Lewis and say, make it happen. Is that how it works?
I think city council would probably send it to the city attorney.
City attorney, okay. Okay, in any event, I'm just trying to get the flow
Right.
of the influence. So
Right.
normally, we recommend to city council says, thank you for your input, ranging from, we're going to ignore it, or we're going to get behind it 100%, goes to the city attorney, and then something happens. I guess where I'm confused on the $50 fee discussion, shall, may, et cetera, where is this coming from? And what is our role? So for example, Carson, if you say what you said, if I could have just written that down, I could have said, that's the recommendation of our committee. Assuming we all agreed with you. We could say, city council, what Carson just said is what we believe. Do what.
And that's what we're trying to get
Okay,
to
all right.
is a.
It's not you going to him, it's you
Absolutely
going to
not.
her.
Yes.
Okay, that's,
It's us as a body coming up with what we think makes sense and then turning that into a letter of recommendation
Okay.
to city council. So
Okay.
that's our output is we create a letter to city council, we give it to our liaison, city council member Russell, right? And then you take it to city council.
Right, and now sometimes the code enforcement staff, it will go through the code enforcement staff. When Maureen Willis was the code secretary, she would do what we wanted and then send it to me. And I don't remember, and then I would take it to council.
Yeah, she would basically take, we would talk through something and then she would write it up like a draft of what we talked about, and then we would sign off on it, and then it would go through member Russell to city council. Member Vincent had his hand up.
Yes, I actually think at this point, we should draft our letter to the council. I think that we should put in the letter, if we all agree, the May language. And I also believe that we should, in our letter, say the calendar year issue needs to be put back in to.
And separation between violations.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think we should, because we've been spinning our wheels on this for a long time, and we've allowed different entities to push us off, and it's making us look inactive. And I don't like that. I think we're trying to be active, and I think we need to respond to our council, who is the one that gives us our power, gives us our charge, and say, this is.
That's what I was hoping we get to
Well,
today.
and I don't think we need Manager Lewis.
Right.
To
And
do
I
that
don't
here.
think we need the city attorney in. I think the city attorney comes in as a sort of framework of that once it goes to council.
Yeah.
I mean,
The reason I was suggesting that is because she's clearly the one who is making these changes, and what has been ineffective is us, because we described what we wanted, like we all came to that and asked Code Manager Lewis for that. And then he took that to city attorney, and then she came back with this. So there's a little bit of a game of telephone going on there. We didn't draft the description of what we wanted, which is what I think we need to do. I agree with you. And that's what I was hoping we would get to tonight. And I would, what?
Well, I think we just do that.
Let's just do it.
Yeah.
I think we just do that.
All right. So
And we actually empower our council to then respond
We
and
beat
say,
it to
yeah.
death. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just been
well, then
going
how about
around.
this? Let me try to make a motion to describe, and then we'll see if we're on the same page. So I agree with Member Vincent. Let's go ahead and take the step to make our letter of recommendation to city council. I'm going to keep it high level and not try to turn it into legal. The motion will be that we recommend that the reinspection fee not be triggered until a third inspection per calendar year, per property, per violation type. Does everyone, okay, that's our motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, let's, all in favor, state aye. Aye.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So we're saying calendar year, so 3 in November is good?
Yeah.
I mean,
What is the calendar year?
yeah, well, no, I know what a calendar year is January 1st to
Okay.
December 31st. My question is it a calendar year or is it a year from the first?
I think calendar year, so it's consistent across the city instead of them having to keep track per, I would guess, but I don't know. We could suggest that. Why don't we put that in there? Let's add that to the motion,
Yeah.
maybe?
Well, and I see your concern is that, you're jumping in a year and what is
Right.
happening starts in December.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
And
I like it better the way you're saying it, from,
Yeah.
so calendar year
well,
from,
it's a 12-month period.
Yeah, from first of
First-
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's make that our.
Second the amendment.
So we'll call that a friendly modification to my motion. I accept.
Yeah.
So we'll make the motion what I stated, but with the year starting from the first offense. Per type, obviously,
And clarification is type, right? I mean,
Yeah.
as in, we're talking.
which I know, I know there's some dispute about how they track the type. But I think it needs, if they're gonna do this, then I think they need to be able to handle it, tracking the type. Because if you have a reinspection on weeds and then you get tagged on a outdoor storage or something, you should go through the full process for
For
that.
each one.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I like the 12-month that you bring up because let's just say I have a weed violation in May. And then I have, and so 12 months goes by and then the next year I have 2 violations in April. I'm a problem child. I mean, if I'm a habitual, within a 12-month period, I'm a frequent flyer. And that's a good way to track it.
yeah, I agree. And that's what it's for. And then it's not designed around a language that enables, beating people up unnecessarily who are trying to do the right thing. So let's take in that friendly amendment and vote. All in favor, state aye. Unanimous in favor. Okay, good. Cool. Thank you, everyone. So we have our So what I'll do is I'll draft that and include that in our next agenda, and we can agree in the next meeting to send that to city council or modify it then.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Chair Green, I just want to clarify that motion was just for those 3 points. Did you want to make a second motion for the mayor shall?
It's true.
That was not talked about in the first motion.
That's true. We
Well, the
probably,
letter will include all of that in one letter.
That's what I
So
just
the
wanted-
motion is really just a single motion that we agreed on the points to include in the letter.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so then we have a discussion on our priorities. Another one that would be useful to have the manager list input on. So our current, when we drafted our discussion of priorities, what we ended up with was track, alley service, and pickup consistency, communications with public and ways of getting our message out, code enforcement fact sheet, social media and magazine topics and messaging, and how to engage with code enforcement as someone reporting in, as someone contacted by code enforcement, discuss overall code enforcement processes, protocols, and procedures, and discretion. Any other topics or things we want to add to this to consider like prioritization of? Anything else anyone wants to include?
Need for
I think that's a good point. Since now it's been officially discovered as here, we should probably revisit. We put so much work into that
Is it in
for a couple
Arapahoe
of years.
County?
What?
Sorry, Arapahoe County?
Yeah,
Littleton has.
so it's actually all the way south of us already.
it's something in the fairgrounds or.
it's been bad.
Well, and I saw a report on Englewood's site that maybe you know about this, Councilmember Russell, that they just finished treating all of the trees in maybe one of the parks or multiple parks or something. Do you know about that?
I don't.
Okay, I just saw it today. I happened to see like a social media post from Englewood, and it was about, one of the topics in it was that they had just finished like a big, do you know, lead code officer Futrov, anything about the treatment of trees for the emerald ash borer that they just completed?
I believe the Parks and Rec Commission, the city foresters under the Parks Department.
Mhm.
So I believe they're the ones taking on the emerald ash borer.
Right, so we had done a bunch of work on informing the public about it, and we actually had made some change to municipal code regarding trees because it was kind of, when we evaluated it, like Englewood doesn't have like, you can have this tree, you can't have this tree. But it has recommendations. And we went through all of that in updated code a couple of years ago, especially in regard to emerald ash borer. And we utilized our avenue of communication with the public through the Englewood magazine. We did several articles on emerald ash borer coming, because if you have an ash tree and you don't treat it before the bug gets to it, the tree will die. And that's, so like, if you wait until the bug gets to it, your tree's gonna die.
A question.
Yeah.
Regarding that. It seems, is there a code associated with this that puts it into this committee?
The codes around it are around the rule, because there are code enforcement issues around tree, like dead trees, tree branches over the sidewalk, tree. So that's partly why it fell into us, is unruly, or, you know, there are rules that fall under code enforcement related to trees. And so that's why I believe, you know, and
Let me tell you why I bring this up.
yeah.
I'm also serving on the sustainability committee.
Okay.
We are in the process of drafting with the forester specifics regarding trees.
Okay.
So we are trying to come up with some things that would address healthy trees, how to treat your tree on your property, so to speak, to keep it healthy. et cetera. It seems duplicitous a little bit that if we're doing it here and they're doing it there, that we're doing the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what is it, vice chair? Vice Chair Watson's, no, I knew your name, I was trying for vice chair, co-chair. Vice Chair Watson's point about Emerald Ash Borer, since it's come up as now it's here. And we have done a ton of discussion about it. It makes sense to like consider, do we need to do anything about it? But I think knowing that the Parks Department's on it and sustainability is already working on messaging, and we've already addressed the code as completely as I think we need to. So I doubt we really have anything else to do.
My only recommendation would be, can we provide them with what we did? Because we listed out how the arborist would work, all of that kind of stuff. I think that's what they're looking for. So,
Yes.
Yeah, I have like everything that I've got like folder tree of stuff on that. So I'll just send it to you.
So you burn a tree for folders and.
You know what I mean? Like a bunch of,
as long as it's an MLF.
I kept track of it all. But I can share that with
That
with you guys.
Okay.
Okay.
That would help. We are.
I mean, most of it's code oriented, but
Yeah.
there's still a lot of other information.
Anything that would help us.
And because we also did a bunch of research and made a whole grid on what all the other cities' policies were.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow. Just to add to that, we had a discussion at our last meeting. And city council actually asked us for our input on a potential tree ordinance, which we generally think is a great idea. If the day comes when Englewood has a tree ordinance, which addresses private use, public trees, dying trees, planting trees, somehow there would probably be a code connection in there. Maybe you would want some kind of
You'd have to enforce
or
it.
regulated enforcement
Yeah,
in
you
there.
have to-
So there is a bridge somewhere in there that I think we can imagine. And this is almost comical, so this is just for everyone's edification, but it's interesting how conversations go. We had a citizen who chimed in at our meeting and was concerned about native grasses, pollinator grasses, and people who are being punished because they have a pollinator garden in their yard. So if code enforcement comes by and says, you've got weeds that are 10 inches tall, and the homeowner says, that is my pollinator garden, and those are there because I put them there.
Right.
And I'm proud of it. Interesting concept. And the question was, and this isn't on fire, but it's just out there to think about. The question was, how would it work if we said to code enforcement, or if we said to code manager Lewis, could some of your inspectors have some basic understanding of what are noxious weeds and what are pollinator gardens? And this citizen said, it's not that hard. And I said, in defense of code enforcement, I said, well, they can't go around with a weed book, and its response was, we're talking about 4 or 5 weeds here. We're not talking interesting play of what's reasonable, so that when the inspector goes down the street or the alley, they could ascertain, is it an accidental 10-inch weed, or, you know what I'm saying? And it's what's reasonable. So we more or less tabled it. Our staff person said they would talk to some other departments. And again, how do we coordinate this? How do we not create these onerous regulations on citizens? But on the other hand, there's a lot of effort towards pollinator gardens and native grasses and, water conservation. So you can't just stomp it out and tell citizens that they
Well,
can't.
Code Manager Lewis has addressed this, and he said that when they tag someone for something that they thought was too long weeds, and the person says, this is intentional.
Okay.
I'm generating seeds. I like that plant. It's intentional. It's an objective thing, and the code enforcement accepts that response.
Okay. So then,
So
okay,
I don't think
share
there's
that.
really much of an issue around that.
Okay.
You know, I mean, there's plants like,
I'm gonna, based
Go ahead.
on the conversation we had earlier, or the input we
Right.
had earlier, there is, if there's no
Yeah.
field process and this other.
that is separate. I agree.
No,
that-
I know,
yeah.
but I'm just saying part of the whole is.
Yeah.
Is,
Well, and I'm still sitting here with what I told you guys about last time. I got a notice on my house that said violation, alley side of property and front side of property. After I got this, I took pictures of all of it. There was nothing too long except for I do have some soapboard in a section of my rock garden that I do let grow and I like it. And it's not, you know, and that might be what they were talking about, but it's not on the alley and nothing on the alley was too long. And this is like, you know, part of my questions tonight about this were going to be around this. Was this a case? And because this is equivalent to what Ms. Dickerson brought up, she got an email saying that the case was closed. Well, when I asked about it, I was told it wasn't a case.
Okay.
So there's definitely confusion.
Terminology matters.
Right, go ahead. Member Strong.
I was just adding in that I think they made a mistake. I walked by your house the next day and all I saw was your support and the creeping Virginia in the alley. And it was your neighbor's property that had,
Right.
it's not yours.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's been times where my leaves were too long, like Member Benson said.
But in that
But
time,
that
I
time,
know.
when I got this, I was excited. I was like, I'll take pictures right now. Like, I'm in the
No,
right here.
it was fine. And you have a rock garden with the flowers and
Yeah.
the perennials and.
Yeah, so supposedly it's acceptable when you respond, but what I was talking about on that was separate from the process, which I think still needs to be clarified because in the code, which I did look at and print it out, it still talks about the 7-day friendly notice, then the 14-day posting. And that's not what's happening. And this seems to be blanket 14-day to tons of people who shouldn't have had it. And then Ms. Dickerson's question about, does this create a cumulative record for her, for me, that somehow triggers something else once you've got 3 of these, especially when they're potentially in dispute? And how is that tracked? What is that? Like, these are all questions that as chair of the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee, I'm still not clear on as many times as I've tried to understand it. And so I agree, it's not clear about that part, but I have good faith that with what Code Manager Lewis has said in regard to the objectiveness around this is an intentional plant versus it's not. At whatever point in the process you get to say that, I believe him saying that they accept that.
Okay.
But, you know, we need the process better clarified.
Right.
So that everyone's,
Is there an invitation somewhere that identifies that? So that somebody just doesn't pull up and see, oh, 3 tickets,
right.
or, you know what I'm saying?
Is this on record in the building,
Or even that, yeah, that's a good question.
right? I don't know. Am I now like, do I have a tick against me?
Is it a case or not?
So, okay, all right.
Like I said, I get one once a year. I do. I forget that I have an alley until like.
Right, no, I mean, if you don't use your alley, that's a really easy thing to have. I don't either. All right, so I would say, so do we think, based on any of that, do we still think Emerald Ash Borer, we might need to do something? Or maybe we wait until you guys need to incorporate what you've done with sustainability as potentially something that affects code?
We have an ad hoc, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We have an ad hoc committee that's going to be meeting here fairly quickly.
Okay.
And I'm glad to hear this because we can bring this to the table. We can kind of address this and I think to dovetail into the code enforcement aspect of it. And so, bring these 2 pieces together. It kind of helps and Member Chisholm is also on this committee that we're kind of setting ears to this. We can kind of listen with different perspective.
And you're welcome to come to the meeting.
Absolutely. It's a public
It's,
meeting.
it's the 31st. And my question,
What?
31st of July. My question would be, in a nutshell, what would you want us to reflect in our recommendations? In other words, you did all the homework.
And it really comes down to, You have to figure out if you have an ash tree or not.
Okay,
And if you do, whether you want to keep it or not. And if you do, then you need to treat it.
so that's a recommendation.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like, because if it's a giant ash tree
Yeah.
and you don't treat it, then you're gonna either have to figure out how to cut it down yourself, which most people can't
Right,
do, or pay thousands to have it removed.
Right.
Like, that's the thing, is people on properties that have been here a long time have
Yeah.
these giant trees that it will cost them a huge amount to have removed.
But there were some ancillary pieces that we figured out during our process, such as how code enforcement would, if the tree was left untreated and it was tagged and you were told it had to go. So there were rules around that. And then there were also rules around arborists that the city can't recommend any. So it's just, there were a lot of little ancillary pieces that you probably should, what we figured out that.
Right, well, and at the time, the city didn't have a city arborist, but we do again now. And so whoever the arborist is gonna have probably the most valuable input on this in general. We didn't have an arborist at the time. We had the former head of the Parks Department was an arborist, but he wasn't officially the city arborist. He came in and spoke to us a couple times and filled us in. But, all right, so no other topics. Anyone want to suggest what's most important among these and figure out, let's try to figure out an order, because these, I don't consider them in order because they're just dumped out. But what, does anyone feel like any of these things are highest priority that we should consider? What matters most to citizens? You know, maybe personally, I really liked the idea of the code enforcement fact sheet. And I don't, we do have code enforcement, like communication info on the website, but there's not like I don't think there's a real concise like fact sheet the way we talked about it in that meeting when that idea came up. I thought that was a pretty good idea. Alley service, I don't know what we can really do. I mean, I think that kind of comes down to, I feel like it'd be nice if city council would, incentivize haulers to provide alley service instead of not support alley service where they've been, going. But I don't know that we have much say or influence there. Go ahead.
Sorry, well, two things on the track. One, when you started, you said that our priorities are trash, so maybe move trash to number 2 no matter what. But
Yeah.
We were talking about where city council or somebody was going to look at a unified trash service for Englewood. Whatever became of that?
I can tell you a lot about that. I was the chair of the committee. So the city wanted to investigate going to a single hauler system. And so the city council appointed a committee of citizens to evaluate the options around that and make a recommendation to city council. The committee, it was really weird how it was done. Instead of the committee being formed and then the committee creating a request for proposal to put out to the trash haulers with the interests of citizens in mind, city staff created an RFP, put it out to the trash haulers, and then allowed the committee to meet after the RFP was sent out. So our committee looked at the RFP and said, well, this doesn't take into account most of what the hundreds of people who showed up to the public meetings said they cared about. So we recommend to city council to throw out the existing RFP, let us write a new one, and then put that out. And that's, city council accepted that. They canceled the original RFP. We spent almost 2 years creating a new RFP and putting that out, and it included all of the things that everyone had said they wanted from, because there were a couple public meetings where hundreds of people showed up and expressed what they wanted. And alley service was the #1 thing expressed by hundreds of people, followed by yard waste included, which is now being eliminated by the haulers too. And so we created the RFP, we put it out, 2 companies responded. Neither of them satisfied the requirements of the RFP, and they cost more than what everyone was already paying. So they eliminated alley service. One of them eliminated alley service and was more expensive than everyone was already paying. The other one included alley service and was more expensive than everyone was already paying, and wouldn't do large item pickup. And so neither of them satisfied the requirements. So our committee unanimously recommended to city council that city council try to negotiate with the haulers to get the points that mattered. And we had a final list. You could look at the history. There's what our letter was to city council said, if you can get a hauler to agree to this, and this, which were the things that we found out that citizens wanted, then do it. But if you can't get this, and this, then just let it stay the way it is. And city council, instead of trying to negotiate, when they reviewed our recommendation, they voted to just let it go. And that's what happened. Right?
That's right.
The open market's doing what it does.
So we can bring it back.
Well, I think people are tired of it coming back.
Yeah.
So then pickup consistency, I don't remember who added that. I'm not really sure. I forget if there's I'm not sure what in code addresses that, or if that was someone wanted that to be addressed in code. Does any, did you bring that up, Member Chisholm?
I don't.
Pickup consistency. I don't even remember where that was.
Are you talking about trash can pickup, or would you take your can off?
That's, I'm not really sure how that ended.
Well, because I think that's how it came up, was we talked about how you had 7 days to remove your trash can from the curb. But
Oh.
you remember, that's how I remember it, because my question was, well, every 7 days you get service. So how do you
But
not?
really, you have 24 hours we have street pickup because we don't have an alley. You can put your trash out 24 hours before the pickup,
Right.
and you have to have your trash can put away 24 hours after. I don't remember who asked for this, but there in the code, it talks about trash pickup days are Monday and Wednesday. A lot of times the trash company wasn't coming, and that may be.
That was my
That's why it
issue.
was.
Now I remember, because say it was Monday and they picked it up this Monday, but next Monday they didn't. And there was no accountability. So then the following Monday, we had 2 weeks worth of trash and we got nowhere. If we called the service, they just gave us the runaround. And it was maddening, because it's like, doesn't the city have some say in this? I mean, that's unacceptable. Now, we went through like 3 services in about 3 months. Finally, we're stable. But my frustration at the time was the city should have some responsibility. The city should be communicating with these services. There's standards that have to be met.
Well, they do require licensing.
So maybe that happened.
That has to do with enforcement.
Okay,
We haven't changed companies and it's gotten better. So
Okay.
I don't know if they rearranged.
maybe they caught the drift.
Maybe the city called them.
Yeah.
Is anyone aware of current, other than annoyance of not having alley pickup, of this being like a regular issue for anyone? Let's try to sort out what do we think is most important to the city?
Is there low hanging fruit here? To be honest, things that we can knock off of the list and do with a meeting or two.
I was just agreeing, things that we could just
Are there
take care
things that
of.
we could take care of or do quickly or easily and just knock them off and say, hey, that's a good one. Let's spend a meeting discussing that or addressing that or something.
What about the dog or animal?
Well, what we've been told is that they're doing a rewrite and that's going to come back to us soon. And they asked us to not worry about it until we get a new draft of that. So it's my understanding is that the whole dangerous animal thing was still being updated as part of the big review of the municipal code. But at this point, I'm not aware of that being something on our plate. That would be another thing Code Manager Lewis would know more about the status of.
So I just remember discussing the color of the leashes.
Right, yeah, we talked about dangerous dog quite a bit, about how to identify them once a dog has been adjudicated, what the rules are. There was a potential problem where there was a gap between like an incident of a dangerous dog and it actually being adjudicated. And during that time, there was no rules around having it identifiable somehow. Like that was one of the things that we talked through. That's something I think we need to ask Code Manager Lewis the current status of, because I'm not really sure yet. And what's in my head is that we were asked to wait until they had a new draft for us to review.
Well, my question is, when we quit talking about that, I don't remember that. It's been a while since we talked about
Yeah.
it. But then the whole dog park thing came up. And I'm wondering if that replaced
If it what?
the other thing.
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah, I'm not sure. That's something we have to ask Code Manager Lewis. I mean, I see what you're saying, Member Emmelhainz. What could we, the code enforcement fact sheet, that might be a high value, fairly quick thing to address. One thing we could do is ask everyone at our next meeting to come in with like some facts that they think should be in the sheet. And we just do a section of our meeting to try to come up with everything we think that should be in that. It's an idea.
I think that's good.
I might also, and again, going back to what happened at the last sustainability meeting, but we actually had someone who does the social media for the city come in and talk to us about how we can utilize the social media opportunities within the city and utilize their staff.
Let's do that. That's a good idea.
If we could get that person in.
Because I know it's a new person since we last met with them. And I know alternate member Redavid had a couple emails with the new person, but I think it'd be great to have them come in. Let's do that.
And there could be some simple things that could be done. Just in terms of if we reflected on the last 12 months, like we have been doing, we just say, what were the hot topics? What did we learn? And what do we think might be hot topics? Are there some unresolved hot topics that we need to keep on the agenda? And our ear to the ground, what are we hearing from our neighbors? Are there anything brewing out there that's upsetting?
I mean, to me, the biggest thing I'm hearing is.
That goes to the fact sheet.
Understand.
That goes to the fact sheet. It goes to communication issues. We heard it twice now, actually, from him about how, the communication, the ability to get the information that you need to get and that kind of thing. I think that the fact sheet would help a lot to direct that. And then utilizing the social media to communicate with people on how to contact code enforcement so that things can be done. That kind of goes together.
Yeah, and making the process super clear, like so everyone can understand what that is. And by the way, just since I brought this up, after our meeting within a day or two, I called because in our meeting I asked Code Manager Lewis, it says call the person. It says issuing officer, their name. And because Ms. Dickerson had said that she didn't call, she emailed. And I asked him, is email sufficient or should we call? And he said call. So the day after, within a couple of days, I did call and left a message. I still haven't gotten the call back. I left a message with my name, phone number, asking for this issuing officer to call me. And that hasn't happened. And that was over 3 weeks ago. So, that part of the process should be clear and consistent for citizens as well.
And, just for your information, the gentleman that sent you and me a email about weeds.
Yeah.
And the city manager went to meet with him and 3,000 of those notices have been issued. And I don't think they were all the way through the city. That's a lot of.
And what Councilmember Russell is referring to is after our agenda was approved last week, we received an email from a citizen with pictures of weeds in the alley complaining about like that the weeds are in the alley and they're not, code enforcement's not taking care of it. So
Then,
Councilmember
so,
Russell followed up on it.
right. So what happened is the city manager went for a ride with him, and then those properties had not been in the area where they handed out notices, so they were coming the next week. So I haven't heard any more on that.
Right, so it sounds like that was just because they, like, as code manager Lewis told us, they're going through the city in like a grid system. And so they probably just hadn't gotten to that section yet. It is a lot of ground to cover. So, all right, back to our priorities. Invite media person to discuss maybe our fact sheet and communications with how to, topics and how to best utilize our ability to communicate and maybe even hear from them what they think needs to be. They're, I think, back and forth, like, the media person's going to kind of have their ear to everything going on in the city. So, maybe there's other things that they would let us know that we could work on messaging around, et cetera. Any other?
Just a quick question. So we will be sending a message to city council relating to our recommendations as we discussed tonight.
Right.
Do we track it, or is it just normal communication? In other words, 3 months from now, you will report, oh, by the way, city council took this action or they didn't. I mean, is that something we should bird dog, or is that something that in the flow of communications, we would always know what city council did?
Really, what should happen is when I get the message, I take it to city council. Then when the city council responds what they're going to do, that should be part of my report to you.
That makes sense.
And if I'm not giving you the report, then you should ask me.
We can get
What's going on.
after you.
Yeah.
And we will.
Okay.
All right. I want to try and get a list, a prioritization of these. Are there any suggestions for prioritization? Any other thoughts on what's important? The trash, is there something we need to do? It sounds like that might be
No, I think there's nothing.
I think it's.
not much we can do. So let's just take that off of our priorities. Communication with public seems like maybe the highest priority. Okay, so we'll
With
make,
both the fact sheet and connecting with the media side of that.
so we'll move that up in prioritization and we'll invite the media person to come to one of our meetings and then we can go from there.
Just, Code Manager Lewis has done a good job on different meetings clarifying the situation, the pros and the cons. And I've often thought, that's great for us, but we got to get it out to
I
the
agree.
world. So that goes to number 2, that somehow we have to share that.
It's very difficult to conduct
Yeah.
this meeting without his input because he knows code enforcement. He's the guy who knows it all.
Yeah.
We usually have very excellent back and forths and digging into the details as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What is number 5 discretion? I don't remember.
That was, I think, around the shall may type thing. It was around like code enforcement discretion in general and the way that they enforce things. This goes back to, in that discussion, Member Chisholm brought up that, discretion can be good and it can be bad, because when it's bad, it can be violent, right? On inconsistently enforced rules, where some people get, something beat on them and some people get away with it. So, I think that's probably always the difficulty with having discretion in a set of rules, is that, you want discretion so that when it's reasonable to utilize I like the concept of education, of warnings or some form of the process, including an educational part where the citizen becomes aware of this is something you have to stay on top of, take care of, it's important. And we're not gonna give you a fine right now. Like, but but again, when it's discretion, then there's the opportunity for bias, even among genuinely non-differentially biased enforcement officers. One officer may always do it one way and another officer may always do it another, and those could be different. And between different citizens, the experience could be that it's biased.
It's the only law enforcement in the United States.
So that, I mean, it makes sense to put that on there. I think it's more of something that we should be aware of and discuss, and maybe even potentially review code to see if there's anywhere in the code that there is or isn't discretion where there maybe should or shouldn't be. And we could make recommendations to city council around that.
It sounds like it really is part of number 4.
Part of a what?
Number 4,
Yeah, I agree.
isn't it really a piece of that? Processes, procedures.
All right, so Emerald Ash Borer, I'm just gonna give you guys info and we'll wait until it's brought up to us as something good, fair?
Yep.
And then we'll prioritize communication with public, way of getting our messages out, what those messages are, social media, and code enforcement backseat will kill crap because it doesn't seem like there's anything we can really do on that right now. I mean, almost all of this really comes to communication. I mean, the overall code enforcement process, protocols, procedures, that's one of the main things I think we need to communicate. So it's almost all really communication. So I'd say our primary priority is just to improve our own understanding of the processes, protocols, and procedures. If we feel like something should be refined in the code, then make recommendation to city council around how to make that more simple. That might be something we do. Like when we try to understand this and if it isn't really clear or if it, like what I'm seeing, the code talks about a 7-day warning, but it's been thrown out and the way that it's implemented, like, why don't we get that all consistent or recommend to city council that whatever the protocols are that we're doing, let's have it be something that a citizen can read in code and understand, or at least read the fact sheet and understand and have that tie back clearly to code. All right, I think we beat that up. Any other input on priorities?
Just a clarification, would you like someone from communication next month? Or do you want to table it to talk about the fact sheet and then bring someone in?
Do we want to invite her for our meeting next month?
I would recommend it because, and having heard her already, she brings some clarity.
I don't even know if it's a her.
It is, well, it was when she came to speak. But it brought clarity to what our options are and how we can go about doing it. It might help us to frame a little better the bullet points and how we can get that information out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my recommendation.
You want to make a motion? Invite her?
I motion to invite the a representative of the city's communication group to speak with our organization.
Second? Okay, Vice Chair Watson. All in favor, state aye. Aye. Unanimous. So yes, so I guess today your staff liaison, I'm the code officer. Both titles are you, right?
I can do the liaison part and coordinate with the other.
Okay, so will you please
Yeah,
invite her?
I'll reach out to communication if they have someone available that can talk next month's meeting.
Whoever, yeah,
Yes.
it's appropriate. Thank
Yep.
you. Appreciate that. All right, so then we'll move on to update from City Councilmember Russell.
I really don't know that I have so much that necessarily applies here. The recall election will be October 3rd.
That's for all four?
That is for all, well, it's all three now because, excuse me, Councilmember Wink resigned
She did.
on Monday night, actually sent a letter of resignation just before the meeting.
Wow.
So council found out at the meeting.
Wow.
So there will be the recall election for three, which means whatever happens, I mean, if Cheryl Wink's position will be on the November ballot, normally she would be 2 years from now. If the other three are recalled, then on October 3rd, there would be a vacancy. And there would be a lack of a quorum. So the lack of the quorum would exist from then until the election in November.
Is it still in the charter that city council can appoint replacements?
It is still in the charter that, well, one person, if there's only one person vacant, city council can replace that position. Right now, it doesn't impact the quorum. We have a quorum because there are still 6 council members. The only area where that becomes problematic when you have 6 council members, if the vote was split 3 and 3, because 3 and 3 is a failure. But, you know, I don't.
Did he resign like as of immediately?
Yes.
Wow.
So anyway, that's kind of sad.
You have a question?
was hers the at-large seat, or did she represent the district?
Yeah, he was at large.
Should be at-large.
She was at large. So,
So we won't have a city council for 30 days?
maybe that would be a blessing. We wouldn't be spending any money.
Vacation? No, I mean, it'd be
Well,
like no quorum for 30
I think
days. So
there are things that can happen if there's an emergency. I think I asked the city attorney, they can get, they appeal to the district court and get permission to address that. But since they know that this could happen, I mean, if no one is recalled, then there's no problem. So, but they know ahead, so hopefully they'll be able to plan to get things in the works before that 30 days.
of the 3 that are potentially being recalled, could you be recalled, then turn around and run for election 30 days?
I did ask that question on Monday night, and our charter does not prohibit that. So the answer to that question is yes.
Is what?
Is yes,
Is
they could. Now, whether they will or not, I don't know.
Could a council member do what Ms. Wink did, say, I'm resigning today, but I'm running in 30 days?
Well, they could resign, but they probably wouldn't. 2 of the council members are up for reelection. 2 of those 3 are up for reelection
So-
anyway.
And so their question is, will I run or not?
Yes.
I'm either fed up to here or dang it, you can't do this to me,
Well,
you know?
right. And so it just, I have no idea.
Yeah.
What is going to happen. So, but I do know there was a recall. They tried to recall the District 3 council member 5 years ago, and it failed. And a lot of times recall elections do fail unless the council members have done something egregious. And the reason is because they want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Whether this council has done what the citizens consider egregious or not is the question. So.
They considered what they were considering doing to be egregious.
Probably, well, you know, probably the code next will be voted on before the recall.
So six council members can vote on codes.
6 council members can vote on code next. So
It splits
if it splits, then it fails.
the whole thing.
Yes.
And that would be a waste of time and money.
Yeah.
Lots. And I'm just thinking out loud here. It's gonna, 3 recalls, that's expensive for the city too. Taxpayers are gonna have to pay for that.
$137,000.
Well, it'll be less now. Yeah, because we're only
One
recalling
less.
one less.
25% less. Yeah.
Okay. And I think it's.
I think they all ought to resign and run for re-election in 30 days. Save some money.
I think every politician should do that every year.
Okay, but
I digress.
Anything else, Councilmember Russell?
I don't have anything else right now unless somebody has a question.
Yeah, does anyone have a question for?
How is that getting communicated to the citizens about, well, I guess the resignation just happened on Monday, so maybe they didn't even have time to get out yet. But for the recall election and those things, how is that information being disseminated?
That will all be notified and it will be by mail-in ballot. So if you're a registered elector, you will
Just
get a ballot.
you know?
But I mean, if you listen to the council meeting, it's out there.
Yeah, haven't listened recently.
Sometimes if you just even look at the agenda, you know,
Yeah.
can get the information.
There are posts that I see on social media, like one good thing to follow is the Englewood Herald.
Hmm.
And if you follow them, then you get notifications when they put out articles that are about Englewood. And pretty much every step of the way with this whole recall thing, there's been articles. So I would say that's one of the best ways to stay on top of what's happening with that.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to my council person, the new council member Anderson is my representative, so I've talked to him about the matter, but.
Council members, after an election, are they replaced immediately? It's not till January, like.
Well, no, used to, council was seated the second council meeting in November. So the election would be on the first Tuesday and then the second council meeting would be the third week of November. But council put it on the ballot a year ago to change that. So to make sure that the certification of the election occurred before the new council was seated. So the new council will be seated on December 12th, which may create some problems.
That was fixed.
Yeah. I mean, we've always done it before the election is certified and so we'll see. I mean, I think that was an unintended consequence, but it would have to go, if we want to change it back, it has to go back on the ballot again for election. That is another thing. There are charter changes that got there. We don't make the charter changes, but we voted to put those charter changes on the ballot for the next election. There's second reading of that. And some of them regard how to conduct a recall election. Instead of the way we do it now, you would have somebody that wanted to run against the person recalled would have to sign up so they both would be on the same ballot. But it would probably be individual, like, shall this person be recalled? Do you want this person to fill that position? I actually think it might create more problems.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. And the one thing the city attorney did say about that, because I asked about that and she goes, it may be that people do not want to run against a person being recalled, which makes total sense. But if they got recalled, they may be willing to put their name out there.
Mhm.
So I think that if we went to one election, it might create some other problems.
Any other questions for Councilmember Russell? Thank you very much. Communications Subcommittee update. Have you talked to them at all?
No, I'm supposed to talk with Lewis for Q3 and I get that done.
Okay. And then, okay, we're good on time.
Oh, yeah.
So then we have, Member Emmelhainz's draft letter to council regarding the police RMS system and reporting, which thank you very much, Member Emmelhainz, for writing that. I thought it was great. Hopefully everyone had a chance to read that. Any questions or thoughts? I didn't have time to get your You said you had a spelling correction.
I sent it back over. It was down.
Because the agenda had already been approved at that point. But there was
The word complimentary in the last paragraph, or the second last paragraph is actually misspelled.
I just did to make sure.
Version of compliment.
We just have a minor edit on that letter. What is it?
The spelling of complimentary is COMPLMENTARY.
Yeah, can you just write that on there? Thank you, Liaison. Good try. Does everyone agree to just send it as is then?
I do.
Okay, then, why don't someone do a motion for that?
I move that we send the letter.
Is there a second? Member Strong, thank you. All in favor, state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, I think that was unanimous. So, yeah, so then our procedure previously with our old liaison would be on a letter like this. You would send it as the liaison on our behalf to City Council Member Russell, and then she would forward it to City Council, right? So will you please do that for us? Okay, thank you very much. Cool, that'll be good to get a response from City Council on. And committee members' choice.
My question is, it seems like there's a communication sitting out there that either didn't come in right or something, and I'm wondering.
Just explain.
Yeah, please explain to me that,
So-
bring me up to speed.
Yeah, totally. And I've actually had a discussion with the city attorney about it. So it really started with your email. So what
And I thought.
technically your email was a violation of open meeting laws.
Oh, okay.
Because when I could call Member Chisholm and we could talk all day about all this stuff. But as soon as we include Member Emmelhainz, that's a violation of open.
And I sent it to the whole group.
Yeah, so we're not allowed to send an email to all of us with, unless it was like decided, please send this chart to all of us, right? But we're not allowed to like send a message to all of us with opinions and thoughts and discussion. That's what our meetings are for.
Mhm.
So we attend our meetings. We all voted unanimously to make our meetings in person now. So this is where we have our chance to discuss. And I'm always going to give everyone a chance. I mean, as long as I'm chair, I want to hear everyone. I wanted everyone to participate. But the way that we participate is by being in person and, participating, asking questions, making statements, expressing opinions, et cetera. So you sent that email and then you weren't here for that meeting. I did ask, you said that you watched it, listened to it. So
Yeah, that's why I sent the email, because I knew that my job.
That's not how it works.
And it was my second meeting, and that's why,
My gut reaction when I received that email was I wanted to respond. But I knew that that would be a continuation of a violation of open meetings. Because instead, I took your email, I put it in the agenda, I read it out, and then I used it as an example of what we don't do. And I said, this is not what we do. We have our meetings, we discuss these things all together. Now, if you and Member Strom want to discuss something, and that's totally fine, or any two of us can talk about anything. And you could even, there's technically not even something that would stop us, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, Liaison Futra or City Council Member Russell, who know these things better than I do. But if I talk to Member Chisholm about something and then he talked to Member Emmelhainz about something and then it went back and then back to me, I don't think that's even a violation. But it's when there's more than two involved in the conversation. So we can't send emails with opinions and thoughts and statements. We can't absentee vote. There's no such thing as that. All right, so I made a point of that. I read your email. I said, this is not how we do it. Please don't do this going forward. in between our last meeting and this meeting, Member Hughes sent an email to me and Code Manager Lewis stating her opinion on what we were discussing today. And tried to make an absentee vote as well. And she didn't ask for it to be in the agenda. She didn't state that it was public comment. It was exactly what you did, except she didn't send it to all of us. And
If I'm gonna break the law, I'm gonna break the law.
and so what I did is, as the chair, the way our bylaws, if you read our bylaws are such that our liaison drafts an agenda, sends it to the chair, and the chair edits and finalizes the agenda. I left it out of the agenda, even though the liaison had put it in, because she didn't ask for it to be public comment, and she didn't even follow what's written in the agenda as the procedure for submitting public comment. It wasn't public. It was a member trying to put their opinions into the meeting without being present. That's what it was, and that's not how it works. If you want to put your opinions in, you're an appointed member of the committee, show up to the meeting. You know, that's how it works. I've scheduled my life around these meetings for 20 years. I think in 20 years, I might have missed 2 of all the boards and committees I've been on. You know, I lead a busy life. I run companies. I do a lot of stuff, and somehow I managed to prioritize my Englewood volunteerism. And you can do that or you cannot, but if I'm not here, I don't expect to be able to put my opinion in on whatever the discussed topic is. And I'm not going to be able to vote on it either. So so then what happened is I received the draft with that email in it. I said, I took it out and said, no, my final agenda does not include that. And they put it back in, basically accusing me of censorship, which is the opposite of everything I believe in. And then I wrote out a pretty strong explanation, which is basically what I just said to the city attorney. And that's why I shut it down when it was tried to be forced into the agenda. Our bylaws state that the chair finalizes the edits of the agenda. My final edit of the agenda is not what's here. My final edit of the agenda did not include that email. That email was sent to Code Manager Lewis and me. It was not requested to be in the agenda. It was not requested to be public comment. There is a procedure written in here. Please send any written comments to A. Futra. He wasn't even CC'd on it. So if she had wanted to submit it as public comment, then she could have seen the agenda and written it, sent it to Futuro, and then it would have been public comment. So I'm forcing the procedure to be the way it's supposed to be, and I'm fighting any violations of open meeting laws, especially when they happen right after I went over it. So that's what happened, and that's what this dispute was.
I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to send you my back and forth with the city attorney if you want to read that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I knew back in March, once you put it out there. Oh, yeah, I did. I messed up.
Yeah, no, and I explained it, and it's fine, but that's what happened.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No problem. I would never want to censor anyone.
So
I
are
want
we all
everyone
good?
to have every chance to speak.
Great.
I'm 100% against all the censorship that's
I do have a question though.
right now.
I do have a question though.
Yeah.
So if this happens, because I don't have that same freedom because I work for a large corporation, wink, wink. And sometimes I do get taken away where I have to be gone. If I did want to speak on a matter as a citizen, I could send something in as public comments,
Send it
but
to
it wouldn't be as a member. I wouldn't,
correct.
but I could voice my opinion
Absolutely.
publicly.
And if she had done that, if she had sent it in as public comment to Liaison Food Truck,
Yeah.
then I would have automatically put it in.
Good.
Yeah.
So that's helpful as well.
Yeah. No question. All right.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I think one thing that we do need to be careful of, my opinion, is a little bit different than yours on the talking to Rick and then.
Yeah, I don't
really tell.
yeah, I don't really.
Because if you all started doing that, I tell you, you tell him, you tell him, it's possible to make the decision behind closed doors.
That, yeah.
And that would be daisy chain.
Yeah.
So what you were saying was probably different than what I'm talking about actually on a agenda item that would be voted on.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning to imply to try to get around the open meeting law. I meant more like if I talked to member Chisholm about like tree stuff, and then he happened to talk to member Emmelhainz about like types of trees and like possible things, and then we all met and discussed those things. I don't mean like trying to get around the open meeting. I wouldn't suggest that that's a good idea.
Okay.
There's precedent of that in Douglas County.
Oh, yeah. That's basically what got him in trouble.
Which is what this whole thing happened.
Say it again?
In Douglas County regarding the school board and the firing of the superintendent, it was done outside of it, exactly in that process. It was daisy chained among the members who were planning on voting so that it basically walked into that meeting without public discussion and became an action. And there's a lawsuit pending right now by the superintendent against this.
Yep.
So they lined up their ducks.
Yeah, that's what we don't want to be doing that. We want it to all be open to the public. The public's welcome to be here and communicate as well. All right, I just lost the last page of the agenda. There it is. Topics for future meetings. So we planned to have election for officers for our meeting next time. And then I guess there's going to be oath of office for appointments. Whoever hasn't already done that. And then let's plan. So our next meeting would fall on August 16th at 6 p.m. Everyone good with that? All right, but did I didn't ask, did any other committee members have anything? Sorry.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And this is more personal on my side, but can you be a member of the board and work for the state of Colorado?
That I'm not
Is
sure.
that an issue?
I don't think you can work with the city.
You can be a member of the board because you're a citizen member. You could not be on city council.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
Well, I know that City Council Member Ward was an employee of the state of Colorado prior to being on the city council, and he was on the budget committee for years while he was a employee of the election portion of the state. So that must have been okay.
That's probably why he stepped down when he got on council.
Yeah, I don't think he was going to retain that job. Like he got a new job when he went for council.
Right.
Yeah.
I can ask for clarification.
What?
I can ask for clarification.
Go ahead. Oh, thank you.
I'll ask.
Yeah, just verify. Okay.
Yeah, I accepted a job with the state. So,
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's it. You're done.
well, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know if there were rules around it. So it just popped in my head. It's like, well, maybe I should ask.
Sure. I would expect that it's okay, but, all right, then.
I have one more request.
Oh, go ahead.
Can we have a discussion or open a discussion at the next meeting regarding the venue of these meetings? It was brought up last time that this perhaps was not the best venue for citizens to feel comfortable coming to express their concerns regarding the police department, essentially. Rather than directing that, I would just like it to be an open discussion that we perhaps could begin with. And since we are now doing more communicating among each other, just to have that, can we put that on?
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine. Can you please add that? It is on Futuro. Thank you. I have actually heard that myself. Again, since our last meeting, I've heard of at least one instance where someone wanted to talk about this, but was afraid to come here. You know, people are intimidated by it sometimes. So, you know, it's unfortunate that is the reality because this is a really nice room.
It is.
And we have video recording and audio that works, you know, and we have it consistently available to us. And that's a challenge in the city hall now for whatever reason. It used to be not a challenge, but now it's a challenge. But I think that should be an open discussion as well. Yeah. All right, then let's adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.